Started. All right, so welcome everybody. I'm Tricia Maltz and I work with Barb Greenberg to help bring Rediscovering You together and out to everybody. And as you all know, or not all of you, Pat and Tricia just found out that Barb Greenberg was our original founder and creator. And some of you, she hasn't seen in 100 years, but it's okay. And others she's related to. So we just have a fun time, but we're really excited tonight to welcome Tricia Ebert as our speaker. And then you also have, just so you know, Pat Butler is going to be our speaker on the 11th of October and talking about her new book. She's in Toronto. And so we've got, things are just coming together and happening here. And I'm pretty excited about it. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for what we're doing and how we're moving forward. So, but Tricia is going to talk all about these psychic things. And she's, if you've read her resume, I about fell over when I read it. I met her under different circumstances, had no idea about all this stuff that she's doing, and then discovered that we have a person in common that we know, that she's in California, he's in Minnesota, I'm from Minnesota. I mean, it's just a small world in this whole operation here. So, but I'm going to put you on as a speaker here, Tricia. So talk to us about these psychic conversations. You got a tremendous background, which I listed in the brochure. And if anybody has any questions or you want to add anything more, that would be great. So go right ahead, Tricia.
Okay. So first of all, I want this to be interactive. So if you're having questions as we're going along, feel free to jump in or raise your hand or whatever and let me know you want to ask something. This subject is really interesting because I believe that we're all born psychic. I think that every one of us has psychic abilities at birth. And some people just choose to develop those abilities and others don't. And I think a lot of people also have psychic experiences and they don't call it a psychic experience. It's just a coincidence that I knew who was calling me on the phone, or I knew what you were thinking, or things like that. And to me, that's really all psychic. Mental telepathy, that's a psychic experience. When you know something has happened to somebody, but no one's told you, you had a feeling. Things like that happen all the time. And people just say, well, that was my intuition. So there's some confusion there between what is intuition and what is a psychic experience. And frankly, if you're getting information that's helpful to you, it doesn't really matter if it's your intuition telling you or if it's a guide or an angel or someone giving you the information. To me, intuition feels a little bit physical, and you can tell me what intuition feels like to you guys. It almost feels like a gut thing. Like in my gut, I know something, or some people describe it as like a feeling in their heart that you know a direction to go in, or you know an answer to something. It comes to you almost in a physical way. And so it's more like in the body. Whereas if you're getting some sort of psychic input from an angel or a guide or whoever is communicating with you, it's usually your angel. And we all have angels around us, whether we realize it or not. Spirit guides, we also have guides around us. Deceased loved ones can come and try to relay information to us through signs. Sometimes you can actually hear them, but it usually requires a middleman, like a medium or somebody who's used to listening to a deceased loved one come through. So those are usually, and ascended masters like Jesus and Buddha and Yogananda and people at very high spiritual levels, those are called ascended masters. And so information will come from these different people. And the way another psychic teacher explained it to me was psychic information usually feels like it's up here. It doesn't feel like it's down in your body. It feels like it's more up around here. And I know personally, when I hear something, it's always coming to me from over here. And it's funny because when I see other people describe when they hear guidance of some kind, they're getting that same type of, it's coming like here. And you can hear it in your head, or you can literally hear it outside of you. So does anybody have any questions about that? Like, who are you talking to? I know some people are afraid to get information. They think, oh, some evil being is going to come through. The reality is we're all light. We are all beings of light, and we're surrounded by beings of light. And, you know, unless you're purposely, consciously trying to conjure up some evil spirit, that is not who or what is going to come to you. It's always going to be beings of light, because you're surrounded by them and you're one with them. And the other thing about psychic ability that I think is important is it proves how we're all connected. And I know, does everybody know who Bobby is, Pat?
No,
or they don't all
no.
know who Bobby is?
I
Bobby
think Barb
Stevens.
is the only
Okay.
person who knows who Bobby is.
Okay. So Bobby is a, I would call her a spiritual teacher, and yet on a very practical level. Would you describe Bobby that way?
Absolutely.
And you know, she brings through information all the time. And what she talks about is how we are all connected. Everyone is connected. And everything that I say or do, that you say or do, it impacts everyone and everything else. And so to me, psychic ability really just proves how we're all connected to one another, that there is really no separation between us and God, between us and light and energy. And mental telepathy is kind of a perfect example when you know what somebody else is thinking. If you weren't connected in some way, how could you know what the other person was thinking? So I don't know if you have any other questions about that or who you're talking to. Anybody?
So have all of you had these kinds of experiences where you knew who was on the phone? You know, you heard voices, or you heard
You read somebody's
messages?
mind. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you had those?
I haven't had that, but I had something very strange happen to me a few weeks ago. And Barb, you would appreciate this too. I was having kind of a rough, bad day, and it just needed some reassurance from some of my new friends who live in my building, and they happened to live across the hall from me. And we were just talking, and then she asked me what my maiden name was. And I told her, and she says, oh, and I told her who my grandparents were. And she says, oh, did your grandmother teach piano? And I said, she did. And she says, oh, she was my dad's piano teacher. And right, Barb? And at that moment I thought, this is my grandmother talking to me, saying, everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be okay. Because at that moment I thought, why in the world would she have asked me what my maiden name was, and had this strange connection all of a sudden? And it was like my grandmother was giving me a hug or something. Aww. At that moment. It was very strange. And even new details saying that the father went to go visit my grandmother where she lived when she wasn't a teacher anymore, and visited her where she was. So wow. I just kind of loved that moment. And I look for those types of moments, like you said. Yeah.
Well, they're signs. They're signs from a deceased loved one. And we have signs all the time, but a lot of times we're just not paying attention. Or again, people will say, oh, that's just a coincidence. The fact that I was thinking about my dad and his picture on my mantle fell over. You know, strange things. My dad does really interesting things, either on his birthday or on the day that he passed. He will do things like knocking over his picture. One time I had he didn't like cats necessarily. And we had a picture of our cat many years ago who had died. And I had the picture of the cat right next to his picture. And on the day that he died, I heard a thud. And I looked up at our wall unit, and I saw the cat's picture had been turned over and like pushed backwards. and his picture flipped forwards. And I walked over and I lifted my dad's picture up and looked at the cat's picture. And I went, "Oh, hi, Dad." And I heard him say, "Stop looking at the damn cat and feeling bad that the cat died. I'm the one who died today. It's my day."
Wow.
And it's not that the cat died on the same day. I just happened to have his picture there with my dad's picture. So they will send us signs. Some people will find feathers that remind them, or they'll see butterflies or a hummingbird or something that reminds them of a deceased loved one. And they're sending us these types of signs all the time. You might find a nickel or a dime or a penny. I'm a realtor by day, and I had a client who I helped to buy her first home. And as we were walking up the steps, when I was giving her the keys, there was a penny on the step. And what just came out of me was, that's a message from your mom congratulating you on getting this house. Her mom had passed when her mom's condo was sold. She got the money from the sale of the condo that enabled her to buy this house. And when I saw that penny, I just said, "That's a message from your mom." And she just burst into tears. Mm-hmm. So there's little messages. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps. We get messages all the time from deceased loved ones. And, if you do notice it, it's nice to thank them for sending the sign, because then they'll send you more. Then you'll get more and more messages. Our cat that died last year, she was a tortie, and she was mostly black with some orange and a tiny bit of white. Now, our house has been cleaned every other week for well over a year by my house cleaning lady and me personally. And yet there's times where I will find black fur. I don't know where the heck this black fur came from, like in the bathroom sink. And I just know that it's little Callie saying, "Hi, Mom, I'm still around," because our pets are still around us too. We may think that we're never going to see them again, but they see us. They're around us all the time.
So I have to tell you the story of the turkey.
Okay.
When I grew up on the farm, right? And you have these big bins where you store grain, corn and all that kind of stuff. Uh-huh. So our father passed away in September 1st, right? And then we had the funeral and did all that stuff. And about 2 weeks later, a wild turkey showed up at the farm. Now, we'd never had wild turkeys at the farm before. And it was at that grain bin where he could see the whole yard and take and look at it all. And it would he walked around like he owned the place. Okay. This turkey was there. And we all knew that it was our dad. Okay.
Wow.
That had returned to make sure that we were doing this correctly. Okay. And he was there probably a good month and a half and just kept track of things, kept looking at things, eating, the grain on the ground and that kind of stuff. But we knew that was our dad.
He was making sure you were running the farm the way he wanted you to run it.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was still in charge,
That's so funny.
Yeah. It just amazes. It's just amazing. Now, he hasn't been back since.
Right.
Just that, that month after he left his body, he then decided that he needed to come back as a wild turkey. So,
and he hung around for a while just to make sure.
Yeah, and to make sure we knew he was looking.
Right. That is so funny. I know when my husband and I got married, this was a second marriage for both of us, and both of our dads had passed. And at this wedding, we saw these two little birds that kind of came from different directions. These two little birds landed on a branch overlooking where we were getting married outside. And I looked at my husband and I said, "I have a feeling that your dad and my dad are those two little birds, because they wanted to be here for our wedding." And when the ceremony was complete, the two little birds just flew in separate directions. They just went off on their own merry way. And I know that was my dad and his dad there. They just wanted to come and watch. Uh-huh. So we've all had just really interesting experiences like this with deceased loved ones. And we've all gotten signs like this. But like I said, sometimes we just don't pay attention or we don't notice it. they will keep trying. They'll keep trying to get through to you. You may turn on the radio and suddenly it's a song that reminds you of your mom or your dad or someone in your life that's passed. So there's many different ways that they can communicate with you.
I had that, when you talk about that radio thing, I managed Sheila Ray Charles, the daughter of Ray Charles, and she was a crack cocaine addict. And so she had her son in the hospital, and she'd given birth, but the son was crack addicted. Okay. And I went to see her and her son, and we went across the street to the restaurant, and there was no one in the restaurant. This is breakfast. No one's in the restaurant, whatever. All of a sudden, the jukebox comes on, playing Ray Charles singing "You Don't Know Me." Okay. You want to talk about a spooky message? We just sat there and looked at each other to say, who turned this on and why did they pick Ray? And what, you know, but it was just Ray, and he wasn't even dead. I mean, he was alive yet, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it was really something to experience that. He sang to us a lot. I mean, every once in a while he would show up in the music, and he was still alive, but it would come in on the radio, it'd come in on the jukebox, and wherever there would be Ray, and he was alive, and so was Sheila. But it was really it kind of just left you like, what's going on here? So yeah, those things happen.
Interesting. Well, you know, and then I wanted to explain a little bit about the ways we get psychic information. You've probably heard the word clairvoyant before. Clairvoyant comes from the French for clear seeing. And so what that means is you have a vision of something, and sometimes it comes in a meditation, or sometimes it might come in a dream. You might dream about something that then happens the next day or the next week or whatever. Sometimes it comes in symbols, and it's always sort of a third eye type of experience. It's not like you're visually seeing it outside of you, although there are people, I don't know if you remember the TV show, The Ghost Whisperer. She literally could like see dead people. So there are people that can visually see things or have visions of things. For myself, one example was, this was earlier this year, I was helping a client to buy a house. And every time I did my meditation, I saw them in my meditation. I saw images of them living in this house and enjoying living in this house. Well, we had just made an offer on this property along with, 20 other people, because in California, everything's getting 20 offers on it. It used to anyway, now it's slowed. And we had been for 3 or 4 months making offers and nothing was being accepted. But in my vision, I kept seeing them living in this house. Well, sure enough, the offer got accepted. And I thought, oh, good, the vision's happening. Then in the middle of the process, they decided they were going to cancel the escrow. They weren't going to go forward. They had all these problems about, whoa, we don't want to do this anymore. We were literally canceling the escrow. I had sent them the paperwork. And I couldn't shake it, because every time I'd go into my meditation, I still kept seeing them in the house. I thought, why do I keep seeing them there if they're canceling the escrow? Well, at the last minute, they changed their minds. Everything worked out. They ended up buying the house and moving into the house. So the visions, when you have a vision, and especially if it keeps repeating itself, you need to pay attention to it and honor it. Because even though it may not look like things are working out, somehow they manage to, which is it's really interesting when that happens. The other way that you can get information, I think we were talking about this a little while ago, right, is clairaudience. Clairaudience is when you hear things. And some people think, am I going crazy? I'm hearing voices. Oh my God, I'm hearing voices. They used to define that as schizophrenia or whatever they would define that as. So over time, it's become more and more known and acceptable that we get guidance from angels and spirit guides and even deceased loved ones sometimes that come through where we can literally hear them. And my most dramatic, this was really dramatic experience with this. I was driving home, this is many years ago, driving home from work on a side street. and there were just 2 lanes on each side of the road. And if somebody had to turn left, you'd get stuck behind them because they were turning left and you'd have to try and get around them. So I'm from New Jersey. Originally, I like to drive fast. And so I would get frustrated with people driving slow in the right lane, and I'd get in the left lane. And all of a sudden, I heard a man saying to me loudly, "Get back in the right-hand lane." And the voice was so loud, and it was a man, that I literally thought someone was in the car with me. So I started looking around inside the car because I thought, oh my God, there's somebody in my back seat or something. Nobody was in the car with me. So I thought, okay, this is my mind playing tricks on me. I'm rationalizing that I shouldn't get in the left side. I should stay on the right side because I'm going to get stuck behind somebody turning left. But I got frustrated again. So I went back into the left-hand lane because some people driving slowly. And I heard this loud booming male voice again saying, "Get back in the right-hand lane." And it was so urgent that I thought, okay, I'm just going to do what I'm being told to do. So I got back in the right-hand lane, came to a 4-way traffic light. I had a red light. When the light turned green, my usual way of driving, again, very fast. So I took off very fast into the intersection. A German Shepherd dog came running into the street. He was on the sidewalk and he came running into the street. And I slammed on my brakes and swerved to the right. I was still in the intersection. The dog bumped his nose on my left fender, turned around and went back on the sidewalk. I mean, I was like this, and I realized, oh my God, if I had been in the left-hand lane and not listened to the voice telling me stay in the right-hand lane, I would have had a really serious accident. It would have been like hitting an 8-year-old child or something. This was a big German Shepherd dog, and I would have hit him. And I never would have forgiven myself, first of all, for killing an animal, but God knows what kind of damage there would have been to my car or to me. I probably didn't even wear a seatbelt at the time. It was a long time ago. So I was there realizing what had just happened. And thank God I listened to that loud voice. And as I started to pull away, everybody like had stopped because everybody saw what was happening. And once the dog was back on the sidewalk and everything was safe, everybody slowly started moving. The traffic started moving again. And as I started to drive away, the voice came back and said, "Now you can get in the left-hand lane." So they have a sense of humor. I just want you to know that, because they will say and do funny things. They always have a sense of humor, and they do try to lighten things up for you. So that was a very dramatic example of hearing a voice, and it was usually, it's not so loud and it's not like right here, like somebody's in or sitting around me. So I don't know, has anyone else heard a voice? You could hear it inside your head too. And some people, the way they'll recognize it is that the voice doesn't speak the way they do. It doesn't sound like you talking to yourself. It sounds like someone else. One lady that I know, I think her mom had passed, and she was driving in her car and she heard something about, "Hi, darling, how are you today?" And she wouldn't talk to herself like that. That was very much something like her mom would say that to her. So that's how she started to distinguish, oh, if they're using words or talking in a way that I wouldn't talk to myself, but I'm hearing it inside my head, then it's probably a deceased loved one. It could be an angel or a guide. Somebody's communicating with me. It's not just me talking to myself. Does that make sense to everybody? Because I know that part of it can be a little bit hard to distinguish, but the outside voice is very obvious when you hear something loudly outside, and you're not a ventriloquist throwing your own voice outside of yourself, trying to tell yourself something. Oh, there was another example that I had with that. Oh, I had another client who was selling her house, and fortunately she and her husband were very metaphysical. She was the lady who taught me how to read the Akashic records. So they were into woo-woo stuff. And they had a very unusual house. It was very difficult to sell. So we had already had one escrow that had gotten canceled. We went into escrow with a new buyer. And we had gotten all the paperwork together. They'd signed everything. I went over to meet with them. They signed everything. I came in my door, And I heard my guides saying, the third time's the charm. And I said, what? They said, the third time's the charm. I'm like, wait a minute, this is their second escrow. Uh-huh. The third time's the charm. I'm like, no, so this is another escrow. This is another buyer that's going to drop out and it's not going to work out. And then I thought, should I tell my clients or not? And I thought, well, they'll get it. They're woo-woo people, you know, they'll understand this. So I went over with some more paperwork. I guess it was the next day. And I said, I have to tell you something. Can I curse on this? I'm from New Jersey. I said to them, I don't want you to lose your shit over this. Okay. But I'm going to tell you something. I said, my guides, you understand, right? And they went, oh yeah. I said, so when I got home with all your paperwork, my guide said, the third time's the charm. And they went, oh, and I said, yeah, so this one is not going to work out. So every day that things were going through escrow where they were doing their inspections or whatever, they kept saying, so did they cancel it yet? So did they cancel it yet? I mean, normally sellers are very upset when a buyer is canceling escrow, but they just kept saying to me, so did they cancel it yet? We're ready to move on to number 3 because we know number 3 is going to be the one. And so eventually, of course, they canceled it. And then we had a little bit of a bidding thing going on, but it was right down to the wire where we didn't think we were going to get them as much money as they wanted. And that it was going to be with buyers that we weren't really thrilled that they were going to take the offer from. And sure enough, these, again, just like with my clients where they went through with this purchase, these buyers came out of nowhere and made an offer on the property that was the best offer they had received out of all of the people that we had been getting offers from. And they're the ones they went into escrow with, and they're the ones who bought the house. So when the voice tells you something, even though you don't want to hear it, you need to listen to it anyway. And if it's a message for somebody else, and I don't know if Pat wants to share or not, but she had a message for somebody else also one time. When you get a message for somebody, they'll keep bothering you until you give them, the person, the message you're supposed to give it to. I had a lady, I was doing an angel card reading for this lady and didn't know her that well yet. And I'm driving to her house because I was going to do the reading at her house. And my guides all the way to her house kept saying, tell her to have another baby. Tell her to have another baby. And I thought, I was arguing with them out loud in the car saying, you guys are crazy. She just had a baby. The baby's in the crib. The baby's like 2 months old. And you're telling me to tell her to have another baby? And she already had one besides that one that was a little bit older. So I get to the house, I get set up to do the reading. And I said, so is there one particular question that you want me to focus on in the reading? And she said, yeah, I'm wondering if I should have another baby.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God, I said, all the way over here, they kept telling me to tell you to have another baby. And she's like, who was telling you? So I'm trying to explain to her, my angels and guides were yelling at me in the car, tell her to have another baby and it's going to be a girl. And as I was giving her that information, she's like, oh no, it'll never be a girl. There's only boys in my husband's family. Everybody has boys. And I said, but don't you have a sister? She said, yeah. I said, so there's girls on your side of the family. She said, yeah. I said, so it really is 50-50, but they're telling me to have another baby and it's going to be a girl. And it was about 6 months later, she got pregnant. And then when she went to the ultrasound, I don't know how many months you are, 2 or 3 months in. I've never been pregnant. I don't know. She found out it was a girl. So they told me before, this ever happened, what was going to happen and what gender it was going to be. And just really interesting when you listen to what the information is. Seemed like there was another thing. So Pat, I don't know if you want to share or not.
Well, I can, but do the other ones, Rebecca and Judy, do you have things you want to share, or Pat? Experiences?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I
don't know.
I had a couple of strange things. The one that stood out to me is my mom passed away 16 years ago this past April. And she was the youngest of all the children in her, her age group. And my grandmother was still alive at that point. She was like 90 or something like that. So pretty poor health. A year later, same day, same hour. And, I knew, what day it was. We were sitting having dinner out on the back porch and the phone rings. And my mind just goes, oh, my grandmother's dead. I knew it before answering the phone. I knew before talking to my cousin. And she died on the same day, the same hour that her youngest child passed away a year later.
Right.
And, and she had a very difficult time with my mom dying because she was the youngest out of all of her children. And because she was in such poor health, she wouldn't even go to the funeral. The funeral people, they're like, well, we could bring the casket here and you could pray over it. She couldn't do it. She was so that heartbroken. And literally the hospice care worker was there that afternoon, right before, my grandmother passed away. And my grandmother, she looked outside and she started talking about angels in the sky. And there were, clouds that were, possibly shaped like them. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I think she knew that it was time. And then with her dying on the same day and the same hour, that is just, and me knowing, but even before answering the phone,
Amazing.
what it was.
Right. Yeah, there's something called there's clairsentience, which is where you feel something, and there's claircognizance, which is where you just know something. And that sounds like claircognizance. You just knew when the phone rang.
Yeah.
And that's our angels and guides. It's like they plant information in your brain. They just give you information. It isn't even emotional. It's just like you just know something.
Yeah,
It's
and I've had that
very
happen.
interesting.
I had that happen before then, a couple other instances, and it's the weirdest sensation. I mean, it was just like you just know. It's very strange.
It is.
It's kind of like, whoa.
Well, I have a story that I'm willing to talk about. I'm not sure this is angels and guides or whatever, but my mother died. Well, my mother started showing signs of Alzheimer's at 74 and died at 86. Which was in 1992. My father died in 2001. And so I had to go and empty his house after his death. I was the executor. My son went up into the attic and hunted around and, of course, emptying a house. He'd lived there for 50 years. Came down with a box of letters that my mother had written in 1930-31 from Paris. She lived in Paris thanks to a very wealthy aunt. She had a young cousin, and so the two girls lived in Paris for a year. And she wrote to her family twice a week, and there were 78 letters stacked in this box.
Wow.
And I had never heard that these letters existed. And so I brought them home back to Toronto. She died in Montreal, and I typed them all up. And as you can imagine, I got goosebumps reading my mother's writing, and she was 24 years old. I put them into a document, shared them with my brothers and my kids, and they all said, "Oh, isn't this amazing?" and then put it in a drawer. And that was the end of that. At the beginning of COVID and all the lockdowns and everything, I got the idea of turning these letters into a historical novel, which I've now done. And I wrote a story in among the letters, because 1930s Paris was, and Europe was, Hitler was on the move, Mussolini was running Italy, the Great Depression had just happened, like it was really bad times. And my mom was living in the lap of luxury, staying in the best hotels. And so the fact that, like, lying on top of these letters was in her handwriting, letters from Italy, Switzerland, and whatever. And so I cut that out, and I've included it. I've published it now as a book. It's called Through Her Opera Glasses.
Oh.
And it really, I felt her guidance all the time. I was trying to come up with a story. She had this romance with a guy from Australia, and I just let myself go and listen completely to what she said.
I love it. I love that's clairaudience.
Is that? I guess it is.
Yeah, because it was unless you heard it outside, but if
No,
if it's inside your head.
It was all inside. And the
Yeah.
fact that I lost her, as I said, for the last 12 years of her life, she wasn't herself. She
Right.
didn't speak for the last 2 years of her life. And so for me to see her as a young woman, and she talks about, she takes courses in singing and French, and she goes to the Sorbonne, and she goes to fashion shows, and she writes to her mom, guess what? This year's fashion, everybody needs to have blah, blah, blah. Like, it was very cool.
What a wonderful
Wow.
story.
Yeah.
Really? That's
Wonderful story.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And-
love that.
It's really, and in fact, I've just done it as, I'm not trying to sell you books or anything. I'm just informing you that I've become addicted to audiobooks since I've been, walking during, because all I could do was walk for a couple of years.
Mhm.
So I got into getting audiobooks from the library. So I've just hired an outfit, and they've just finished the audiobook, and it's about to be put out there into the world. I have two different actresses or narrators. One reads the letters, a youngish one, sort of mid-20s, and then a little bit older is the person who does my voice, who does the narrative. Anyway,
Wonderful. I love that.
that I could so easily have lost that box,
Right.
I didn't
Well,
even know.
You were guided. You were definitely, you were your son. You were
Yes,
both really
yes.
guided to find
Yes.
those letters.
Yeah,
And she probably gave you the idea to go ahead and turn this into a book.
absolutely. She probably did.
Yeah. And then guided you all the way through the writing of it.
Yeah.
I
And
love
it kept
that.
in terms of mental health, I mean, we've all felt so isolated. I'm retired, so I'm not working anymore. But to have that as a project was hugely beneficial for me. So,
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So-
wonderful.
mhm.
So I have a question. I have a grandson who sees auras. He doesn't
Uh-huh.
hear anything, but he sees auras. And he sent me the colors of all of us,
Oh.
of the family. Everybody in the family sent me the pictures or what the colors are for all of us. I'm purple, by the way, a very rich purple. But
Of course.
What does that mean? What is that? What does that mean?
That's very much a spiritual color. Does everybody know what the chakras are? The chakras?
Mhm.
No? Okay. And channeling is kind of the other piece of all this, because when information is just coming to us and through us, you're basically what they would call channeling it. It's not really coming from you. It's coming from divine inspiration, or whatever you want to call it. And some people, I'll just go back. So when I started down this path, I started channeling stuff, and I would draw pictures. I didn't know what I was doing. I was drawing pictures of people with these little circles all over their bodies. And I took it to the Healing Light Center, which was a place where I was learning about energy healing and all this sort of stuff. And I said, I'm drawing these pictures. What are these pictures? And they said, well, those look like chakras. And I said, what the hell are chakras? I didn't know what that was. So chakras are basically little energy vortexes that are all over the body. And the core vortexes start at the spine and go all the way up to the top of your head, to the crown. And there's different colors that are associated with each level. So the root chakra, which is at the very base, is, where the sex organs are, that is red. And that is about our physical connection to the world. Our money and our, all of that stuff is basically in the root chakra. The next level up is basically kind of where the belly button is. It's an orange color. That's very much the emotional chakra that governs how we feel about things. And right above that is the solar plexus, which is yellow. And that's sort of right where the stomach is. That's what I call my gut instinct. I have a very strong solar plexus yellow connection to whatever, where I feel things intuitively right there. Green is the heart chakra. And that obviously is about, and once you get to the heart chakra and above, you're very much into the spiritual realm. Everything below that is more your connection to the physical, emotional realm, even the solar plexus. So then you have the heart chakra, which is about love and universal love and your love with family and friends. The next one is blue, which is the throat chakra. If you've heard the expression, he talked up a blue streak. A blue streak is the throat chakra. They're talking. And so if you have troubles communicating, you might have sore throats a lot and that sort of thing. It's usually related to this chakra right here. The third eye chakra is an indigo color. So it's a combination of blue and purple. The crown chakra is purple. If you put purple and chakra together, you have circle. So it's an economy of words. You have your circle right here. So you have an indigo here, which is the third eye, where you might have a vision of something like we were talking about, that clairvoyant experience, whether you're meditating or dreaming. And then the purple is on top, which is very much your crown chakra, your connection to spirit. And so someone who has a lot of purple in their aura, and the aura around all of us is the combination of all of these colors that we all have, that are a reflection of who we are, our health. Some people might have some murkiness in their aura. I don't know if was this your grandson, Pat?
Yes, it is my grandson. And he did say that there was one person that was murky.
Okay.
That was more brown.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't know about that.
That usually indicates some sort of an illness. And for someone who can see the chakras, I've had instances here and there where I can see them. It's not something I do normally. But for those who can see the chakras and they can see the aura around somebody's body, if there's some darkness or some murkiness, it usually means there's an illness. And sometimes they can actually see where the blockage is or where the illness is in the body. So there's medical mediums that can look at somebody's body and just tell where there's a blockage of some kind. And everything is energy. So when we have physical problems, it's really some sort of an energy blockage in the body.
Okay.
And if you know what acupuncture is, where they stick little needles in you, the acupuncturist is targeting the chakras that are really all over our body. Those are just the main ones at the core, but we have chakras all over. And then the meridian system is like the veins in our bodies. The meridians connect all the energy together throughout our bodies. So when the acupuncturist is putting a needle in a particular spot, it's because they're identifying that there's a blockage of energy somewhere right in that spot, where it's causing some sort of an illness or, whatever the issue is that's going on in the body. They're trying to, with that needle, basically jar the energy, open it up. That's what they're doing. It's almost like sticking a pin in a balloon and letting the water leak out. So they're like sticking a little pin in that spot to unclog it, or like taking a hose where there's a kink in the hose and you unkink it.
Sure.
So that the water can flow through. So it's that type of a thing. So if somebody has some brown or murkiness in their aura, there's some health issue going on, and your grandson might be able to figure out what that is.
Interesting. I'm going to talk with him about that because it was his sister, and she has had some health issues.
Okay, that makes sense.
And yeah, that makes very good sense. So,
Yeah.
so I have two other things that I can share if people are interested that were experiences that I had, and then you can talk about them. The one that you referenced earlier about sharing again was with Sheila, the singer. Okay. And she had decided to dedicate her life to Christianity and become a minister and all of those kinds of things. But Sheila was a 22-year crack cocaine. This is all public information, so I'm not telling you anything out of school. So
Right.
She was a 22-year crack cocaine addicted. Okay. Ended up going to prison and doing all these things. And she had 5 children. I have told you about the one son, but she had 4 daughters also. And 3 of those were born crack addicted. But before her parents passed, before her mom and dad passed, she was very much on the streets. She would disappear for weeks at a time or months at a time. The kids, she'd go to get a loaf of bread. You know, she was living with her mother. She'd go get a loaf of bread and never show up for 3 weeks or 3 months, right? And just leave the kids with the mother. And I mean, this drug addiction has all of these components. So then she went to prison. She did the recovery from the drugs, all the rest of that. And then she's being a minister, but she has this daughter that is continually assaulting her about how she abandoned her and did not, take care of the kids and basically guilting Sheila. And so I'm supposed to now go and meet Sheila on a little project we were doing, and I had to get in the car and drive. So I'm in the car, I'm driving, and I'm hearing this conversation. And I'm supposed to tell her this, and I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. You need to tell her this. You need to tell her this, okay? And I'm going, I don't want to do this. And argue back and forth, and nobody else is in the car. I'm driving, I'm arguing away, okay? Finally, I just yelled and said, okay, I'll do it, okay? Just like that, right? Dead silence. All right. So I get to the meeting where we do what we're supposed to do. And then, oops, we just had somebody want to join us. So then we get all done. And so I said to Sheila, I said, I have to share something. I've got a message for you. Okay. And I told her, I said, I've been, driving and I had to tell you this. So I took her by the shoulders. Now, remember, she's going to be a Christian minister. So I said to her, this is the message. Either you believe that God gave his only son to die on the cross for your sins, or you don't. But you need to decide. Okay, that was the message. One way or the other, you need to decide. And she was just stunned, okay? Whatever it was. And I delivered the message. I never heard another thing about it.
Wow.
But that was the message that I was to deliver to her. Either you believe it or you don't, but make up your mind.
And it had to do with forgiveness.
Yeah.
It had to do with forgiveness because she let her daughter keep guilting her and she was not forgiving herself. And if Jesus forgave her, why was she not forgiving herself, even though her daughter kept guilting her?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and I'm going, was that God talking to me? I don't know, but I don't know. But it was that intense an argument in the car. I mean, I remember driving around the block because I was so mad I was having this conversation. And I didn't want to have the conversation, and I certainly didn't want to tell Sheila. But the moment I said, okay, and I literally yelled, okay, I'll do it, was dead silence, drove off to the meeting, and then afterwards I did it. Sheila was just speechless, but that was the end of that whole, guilt thing. But it was really very interesting how that worked out. So that's one experience. And then the other experience I had a long time ago, I was a young woman and running a business, childcare business, and I ended up in a meeting out in rural Minnesota in a welfare director's office, right? And so I'm talking about, and I was a family daycare provider, and I'm talking about childcare and all of these different issues. And I'm sitting across a round table from this welfare director, okay? And the next thing I know, I'm standing on the other side of the room, watching myself sit at the table, talk to this guy, and going, where in the world did you learn that language, Patricia? You don't even know what those words mean, okay? I mean, it was the strangest thing, okay? So as I watched myself have this conversation with this man, and then questioning where I learned these words, because who knows where I got them from, but there I was. I don't know what was going on, but that was quite an experience for me. Now, Bobby calls that a witnessing experience, but you had a different name for it, Tricia.
Well, it sounds like astral projection, and astral projection is an out of body experience. So you were literally like outside your body watching yourself.
Right.
So that is astral projection. That usually happens when people are asleep or in a meditative state. It usually doesn't happen when you're in a waking state like that. So that was very unusual. That's something I haven't heard of happening before.
It was very unusual.
Yeah.
It scared me half to death. But
I could see that being very scary.
Yeah, because I knew nothing about any of this kind of stuff. And there I was out in, the cornfields in the welfare director's office, wondering how I learned these words that I was speaking to this man about whatever we were talking about. I have no idea.
Could I ask, when you say these words, are you saying that's like a technical, sociological words or something like that?
Well, apparently I was being very convincing about some project relating to welfare and children and family daycare and what ought to be happening and how you structured it and all of this stuff. And I'm a pretty good bullshitter, but I can't spell half of these words. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So this was like channeling. You were basically channeling this information to help people. You were trying to help people by channeling this information and telling him how this program was going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've done that all my life, but I never, because it happened one other time and I can't remember. I've been trying to figure out when it happened, but I've never, that was my most vivid experience of being outside of my body, watching me do it. But I often talk about things that I really know nothing about, but I'm very convincing.
Well, it could be a combination of being a really great actress and if you're really bringing through valid, accurate information that you really don't have any knowledge of, then you're channeling it like claircognizance, like I said, where you just get information in your head. You don't even know where it comes from. It's just there. It's like somebody's just planting. It's almost like a computer getting, if you remember the old floppy disks or whatever, just like somebody planted the disk in your head. I guess it's a download nowadays, right? Everything's digital. So it's like a digital download into your brain,
right?
Where you just know things and you don't even know how you know them.
Right. And I have a lot of that. And I've done a lot of work with behavior styles. So I've learned about behavior styles, but then I will be with groups of people and I can just talk about how they are going to interact, and it's always accurate because I just know it. It's just a knowingness that I know, and so I can just do it, and then I don't remember what I said always, but
that's definitely channeling.
Yeah,
a lot of times when you don't remember stuff that you're talking about, it's just coming through you. It's a channeling experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jody. We're glad to have you here. So
I have to say hi to Jody too, because another person I haven't seen in forever. It's
I
great to see
know,
you.
and
Thanks, you all. I'm sorry I'm late. couldn't get off a phone call, but I wanted to listen in. So thanks I'm just going to jump in.
Oh, yeah, well, we're really glad you're here, and we are recording tonight. This is one of the times when we're recording, but we're coming to the end here, but of our time, and we
Wow.
can stay longer, but other questions, other things you want to talk about? Barb, I cannot believe you've been quiet.
I've been trying really hard to be quiet and let other people talk because I have a whole list here. Oh my God.
Please share. I'd love to
So
hear
I'll
what you
go
have to
really
say.
quickly. First of all, I love that you let everybody share their stories, because I think the more people share their stories, it gives more of us, it gives us all permission to acknowledge this psychic stuff that's around us. So I think just by sharing stories, it's very powerful that it's allowing people the opportunity, realization that, yeah, oh yeah, okay, I get it, and to notice it more. So that's very cool.
Right.
The first book I read about chakras, it's an oldie but a goodie. If anybody wants more information, it's called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Meese. Is that how you say her last name?
Carolyn Mace. Carolyn
Mace,
Mace.
M-Y-S-S. Yeah,
Yep.
I really liked that, and it was very clear, and it went in depth about, and it had, it was easy to read. It had stories. It was a very cool book. I liked that a lot. And so my voices, during the divorce, I went through a phase where I'd like to go, see what he did to me, see what he did to me. And in the middle of the night, clear as a bell, a voice woke me up out of a deep sleep and went, not acceptable, bucko. Okay. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's not, is it? So I had to reframe my my journey. And I had, what else can I say? Well, when my daughter was in a coma, she spoke to me. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I said, if you need to leave now, I will release you with love and blessings. If you're going to stay and fight, I'll stay and fight with you. And man, did she let me know, boom, I'm staying. Like, okay. And whatever the doctor said, I knew she was going to come back, and she came back.
Wonderful.
So that was very cool. And when you were talking about, see, I'm on a roll here. When you were talking about real estate, I moved in, I looked at a lot of places. I found a condo I really liked. It was winterish towards the end of winter. When we put the key back in the lockbox, it wouldn't go in the lockbox. It flew out, landed in the snow. We couldn't find it. I said, that's my grandmother. She does not want anybody else in this house. We got to fit this house right now. So
wow.
my mom passed away. There were a lot of stories. So yeah, I'm enjoying this conversation a lot, and I think it's opening us all up a little bit to acknowledge and embrace what comes.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Barb.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that Heidi said that she had to turn her camera off because she has to pick up her daughter, but she's still with us.
Okay. So
She's
yeah,
listening in. Those are wonderful stories, Barb.
thank you.
Those are really wonderful. So you've definitely, like I said before, we all have these abilities. Every single one of us is psychic. It's just a matter of recognizing these things when they happen, paying attention. And you may not notice it at the time it happens. It might be later on. You'll go, oh, wait a minute. How did I know that? How did I, so the wheels will start to turn after a while, and you'll start to pick up on things that have happened in your lifetime that were not like normal everyday experiences.
What can you tell us about angels?
I was raised Catholic, so I was raised believing that I have a guardian angel. So I think that that's a gift that I was given at a very young age. Not everyone realizes that you always have actually usually a couple of angels that are with you, that are always protecting you and guiding you. And the angels are beings of light. They are messengers of God, and they bring through God's love and light, especially in difficult times. I've personally been through a divorce also. When I went through my divorce, I got divorced, I lost my home and my job like all in 1 month, and had to just scramble and find another job really fast so that I could find another place to live really fast, because I had to prove I had employment. So it was, just trusting my angels and guides that they would be there to protect me and guide me as I went through this process. It was a really difficult time. Angels are beings of light that have never been in human form. There are people who are known as being earth angels, and they are incarnated angels, but technically angels are usually just beings of light that have not incarnated physically into a body. Spirit guides, on the other hand, are usually people who, and everybody has different guides that resonate with you and what you're drawn to, because then past lives is a whole other issue, because you've had many lifetimes here and you've had many experiences, and someone might be really drawn to Native American culture, and someone else may be really drawn to East Indian, like Hindu culture. And so someone might have a spirit guide who's a medicine man from a tribe in North America, who is there, who you may have known in another lifetime, and they've become a spirit guide for you. And someone else may have had a lifetime in India, and there's maybe Yogananda. Well, Yogananda is more of an ascended master, because the ones that are like super evolved, I guess you could say, spiritually, are known as the ascended masters. They're sort of at the highest level of, information and guidance that they can provide to you. And one of the other things I wanted to mention about angels and guides and even deceased loved ones, they're around us all the time. And the veil, I've been getting this message for well over 20 years. The veil between our physical world and the metaphysical, the spiritual world, is very thin. The image they gave me today to bring on this call is like, if you have a window sheer, like a curtain that's a window sheer, you know how thin those are? It's just to filter out the sunlight. That's how thin the veil is between our physical realm and where they are. And the only reason we usually don't see them and we usually don't hear them is because they're vibrating much faster than us. If you're in a physical body, you're very dense. And anything that's physical vibrates at a very slow rate. Does anybody here like Star Trek, the original Star Trek show?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody might relate to this. There was an episode where they would drink the water on this planet and speed up. Their metabolism would speed up. And so they sounded like buzzing flies to everybody. They were right there in the same room. So, and at one point they put this stuff in Captain Kirk's drink, and he drank it and he sped up, and he was like on this other level with these people from this planet who had this weird stuff in their water that accelerated their metabolism. So everyone around him, Spock and McCoy, and everybody was moving very slowly. And they couldn't see all these people that were around them from this other planet, just because they were vibrating at such a high rate. That's the example I'm always given. That's our angels, our guides, our deceased loved ones. They're all around us. People go, where did they go? They're here. They're just invisible to us, even though the veil is very, very thin, just because our rate of vibration or our frequency is very slow. And so the way that we make these connections is we meditate or whatever it is we do. And some people don't even have to meditate necessarily, because a lot of times I don't meditate and the information just comes anyway. But you have to be vibrating on some level spiritually, mentally. I don't know exactly how to describe it, you're vibrating at this fast rate. So your rate is matching their rate. So there's that connection, and you're able to see or hear whatever information they're giving you, even if they're just planting it in your head. You're vibrating at a similar level where you're able to get that. You normally in your everyday experience may not have this experience at all because you're not in tune with it, if that makes any sense. But the veil is very, very thin. So I just want everyone to know that they're with us all the time. Our angels are always, always with us to guide us and protect us. Our spirit guides are always there to provide us with guidance, especially in really difficult times. The ascended masters are always available to call on when you really need some higher wisdom, some inspiration, something like that. Those ascended masters are always available, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or Yogananda, whoever you consider an ascended master. And trying to think if there's anything else. I don't know if that answers your question, Pat, about who the angels are. The
Well, when
angels.
you mentioned-
Yeah, go ahead.
Thinking about angels, there was time years ago, let's say maybe 15 years ago, and I was driving in our little car to teach a course the next day. I was a facilitator. I was on a big highway, a 6-lane highway in Toronto, 3 lanes in each direction. I was in the middle lane going west, and suddenly the car died. Absolutely, completely died. There was no electricity or anything. And I had these big trucks and everything. It was like 5 o'clock on a Friday, and all these trucks were around me. All of a sudden, this man appeared and stopped, parked his car, walked across the lane of traffic to me and said, "What's wrong?" And he pushed me off to the side. He was able to push. Turned out he was a former, like we have CAA in Canada. I don't know what you have, but it's like a service that looks after broken down vehicles. Do you have AA? Is that what it is?
AAA. It's AAA here.
AAA.
Yeah, AAA.
Same
Yeah.
idea. So this guy is a retired or a former driver with AAA. He pushes me off to the side. I phone, and my husband at the time is different. I have a different husband now, came to look after this abandoned car. This fellow drove me to where I was going, which was like 20 miles away and whatever. Well, he would not tell me his name. I wanted to send him some money or somehow thank him, and he wouldn't even tell me his first name. And he was my guardian angel. Like, he really swept in. And now I have a brother who is American, as a matter of fact. And when he heard this, he said, "Really? You got in the car with a stranger and you let him drive you?" And I said, "Listen, I was in such a bad way that I had to." And it was just such a lovely feeling. And so I've referred to him as my guardian angel of that moment.
My understanding is that angels do incarnate in times of emergencies where they will take over. I mean, kind of sounds weird, but they'll like take over someone's body, swoop in, help you, and just disappear. And you'll never see or hear from them again. And you're not the only one who's had experiences like that. It does happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I could ask about animals. Like, are they somewhat spiritual or guides? I mean, I know you mentioned the birds. Are there other animals, deer and so on?
You know, that's like a whole thing unto itself with animal spirit guides. People do have like totem animals and power animals. And sometimes you just have a really strong affinity for a particular animal. It might be an elephant. It might be a zebra. It might be a giraffe. It could be a black panther. Someone was asking me recently, what is my totem animal? And I'd never really thought about it, but I love black panthers. One of our cats, previous to the ones that we have now, was a black cat, and everybody said he looked just like a panther. And so when I think of a totem animal, some sort of like a animal spirit, I think of a black panther. And I had a dream one time because someone was saying also, well, what's your power animal? And they might come to you in a dream or in a meditation. I had a dream where I was wrestling with a polar bear. And that image has stuck with me for 20 or 30 years. That particular dream, I felt like there was some connection with that polar bear. And that very much for me felt like a power animal. So Judy, do you have some affinity for a particular type of animal?
I see a lot of deer. I guess that's the one that I was
Okay.
particularly wondering about.
What you can do is you can Google spiritual meaning of seeing a deer. And there's usually something that will strike you when you look up the meaning of that. It's amazing what you can find on Google. Because, you know, when I looked up the panther with the strength and the courage and the perseverance and all of that, that was like, that makes sense that I would want that type of animal in my sphere supporting me. And
it's
yeah, go ahead, Pat.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I have the Bear Clan animal cards in book, and they resonate with me. And periodically, I will pull a card and look at, you know, to what that animal is. And it's really, that's a very interesting point, Judy. Thank you for bringing up about animals, because I think there's a lot of resonate and energy exchange there. And I really find those helpful.
And if you see an animal that you wouldn't ordinarily see, there's usually some sort of a message there if you're paying attention. And again, you might have to go Google, what is the meaning of seeing a crow that I don't normally see? Or what is the meaning of seeing a hummingbird, if that's what you would not normally see, or a deer, or a gopher, or what are the ones that look like rats? They look like big rats. I can't think of the name of them. Whatever they are.
Okay.
What is it, Judy? Do you know what it is?
I think possum. Is it a possum?
A possum. A possum. And the babies are so cute, but you know, they're like ugly cute to me. Because I've seen little baby ones that have been in our backyard. They're so cute. But you know, the big ones are kind of like big rats. They just look like big rats. But what's the meaning of seeing that animal when you don't normally see it? There's so many layers to psychic experiences or spiritual or metaphysical experiences that, you know, we could probably talk for several days about all of this. And it's just important for everyone to understand that we've all had these experiences. It's not unique to me or to someone like me who might teach classes about it. We've all had these experiences and we all continue to have these experiences. And it's really just about paying attention and acknowledging when these things happen. And just all you have to do, and you don't have to do this, but I like to say, thank you, angels. Thank you, guides. If I get information, normally it's something that is to protect me or to guide me. It's to help me in some way. And that's why they're there, is to always protect you and guide you and provide you with answers when you're looking for them. So it's nice to acknowledge them and say thank you. And especially if you get signs from a loved one, to thank the loved one for sending you that sign.
And so we would like to say thank you to you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, this has been really a real treat, and I don't want to overstay our extended welcome here or whatever.
Well, this has been fun because I don't, you know, in my day-to-day world, I haven't talked about this a lot recently. I used to teach classes on getting messages from your angels and that sort of thing. And I just got very caught up in doing real estate and haven't done this sort of thing for a long time. And I really miss it. I really miss talking about it and sharing experiences with people and hearing what other people's experiences are. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. And what's the interest level of having her back at some point? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
I'm happy to come back.
Okay, well, we'll give you a little time off. And then we'll ask you back. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, this was wonderful. Thank you, Tricia, so much.
Sure.
We're just very appreciative. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And Pat Butler, thank you for being here. And we look forward to you on October 11th. Pat is going to be our speaker. So we're just gonna have a really great time, but take care. And Heidi, I hope you have your daughter in hand and everything's good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And next week is Chef Larry, and we're going to be talking about cooking. And he's a Caribbean chef, and he's going to talk about cooking for one. And then, of course, we will have all sorts of other ideas of what we should be talking about. Okay,
Okay. Thanks.
so perfect. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Namaste.
Yep.
Bye.